Welcome to David Game College Horizon Pods. In this podcast, we will look at the David Game group of colleges, but in particular, LILA College, Liverpool. With me today is the principal of the college, Tom Davis. Welcome, Tom, to the David Game Horizon Pods. How are you?
Thank you so much, Theo. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very well. Greetings from semi-sunny Liverpool.
Oh, lovely. And same from here as well. But before we start the topic, and this is going to be quite an interesting topic because we haven't done a podcast on the college in Liverpool before, I'd just like a bit of background to yourself. How did you actually basically actually join our group?
So my story is a relatively interesting one because I didn't start out when I left university going into education. I actually began my life as a lawyer. I'd always wanted to be a barrister, and that's what I started doing when I graduated. I was lucky enough to win a place at university to read law and then a scholarship place at bar school. So I actually spent 7 years practicing as a criminal barrister. But for the last 3 years of that time, I started doing things related to education. I started tutoring on a bar course, training new baby barristers. And I found out that I absolutely loved teaching. I really, really enjoyed it. It's very similar to being a lawyer in that I feel with education, you never finish a day not knowing the impact you've
That's
had
right.
with a
That's
client
right.
or a student.
Yes.
So I gradually grew my commitment to education, lessened my commitment to practice, became a module leader, a program leader, and eventually a national director of bar programs, and then was approached about the role of dean of the law school at a place called King's Inns in Ireland. Following on from that, I actually became the dean of 3 different university level law and business schools, as well as working in regulation. And I really felt like education, I'd found my tribe, I'd found where I thrived, and I loved it. I don't think many people can say they love their job. But after, at that point, nearly 20 years in law, I fancied a change. So again, having been approached, I moved into languages with an international language campus company. And after 3.5 years doing that, including during the pandemic, I was approached about this very interesting opportunity to launch a new college in Liverpool in partnership with two established entities, Lila and David Game. And I think I took the job for the best possible reason, that I thought that sounds really interesting. That sounds like a really good challenge and an opportunity to grow something from the ground up, which doesn't come along very often.
True, true. And I hope that you're enjoying it.
Very much so.
Okay, great. Now, Lila College, Liverpool. Just tell me a little bit about its history. When was it established? And basically, a little bit about how that partnership works.
So Lila is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and it's a truly extraordinary entity in that it really is a family business, and it's run by two extraordinary sisters, Leanne and Victoria, who had been English language teachers. And I hate to speak for them when they're not here, but I think they knew that they were delivering something special in their classes and thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a school where everybody delivered to this standard and with this passion? So Lila began very much as a passion project. I've heard stories about it beginning in a Georgian building, which Liverpool is blessed with many of, with the office in the attic and the challenge of getting a photocopier up there, and building through to become this award-winning language school that, whilst it's a one-off independent school, really hits above its weight in terms of international reputation. In fact, last year they won the Pioneer Award for the best language school in the world, which is extraordinary. So
Abs-
their
Absolutely.
byword is love to learn. And with this fantastic school in the centre of Liverpool, language is, of course, a very cyclical, very seasonal business in terms of its peaks. So they started thinking a few years ago, what could we do with this amazing space outside of the peak? And they thought that a sixth form offering would be very interesting in Liverpool. And Leanne was aware of David Game and their ethos of helping students love to learn, the belief that no child should be left behind or judged by their past. And it seemed like a very natural match. And so those conversations began about launching A levels and a foundation program in Liverpool in partnership with the 50-year history of David Game and the 20-year history of Lila coming together.
I think that's excellent. And how long has the college been established for now?
So we have just completed our second year of academic delivery. So we have A-level students nervously awaiting their results, and foundation program students also awaiting their results, and holding offers from some really amazing universities to take their next step.
Good, good. So now that you have students, and obviously you're expecting, and we'll go into that, the September intake, what type of age range of students do you currently work with?
So our minimum age is 16, and the age restriction is dependent on the kind of student and where they're coming from. So for domestic students or students who already have a visa status that allows them to study in the UK without sponsorship, 16 is the minimum. And because we're a college, not a school, we're flexible as to the upper level of study, bearing in mind safeguarding and, of course, an appropriate class mix. It's an exciting time because it's our first year as a sponsor with the UKVI. So for sponsored students, that first year for all new license holders, you're restricted to 16 and 17-year-olds. So our age range at the moment is pushed more at the younger end. But because the courses happen within this vibrant, established English language environment, there is a very broad range of nationality, of age, of background available to inform that experience as students go through their time with us.
And I'm sure there are students who may not need UKVI CAS letters.
Absolutely. Obvious category would be students coming from Ukraine under the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which has done so much to help Ukrainian children in particular and young people find a place of safety to continue their studies. But we also have students, for example, from Bermuda who hold dual UK and Bermudian citizenship. And indeed, we've had inquiries from domestic English nationals who don't need any kind of sponsorship, of course.
That's excellent. That's a nice blend of students and backgrounds and
Very much so.
nationalities and ethnic groups as well. Um, okay, what is the actual core mission of the college, and how do you reflect that in its day-to-day operations?
So, as I mentioned before, their tagline would be "Lila Love to Learn." It is a belief that whether you are doing a 2-week English course or a 2-year A-level course, we want our students to love what they are learning, to love what they are experiencing, both in and out of the classroom, whether it's activities, supercurricular activities, or purely social. And that's achieved through a set of values. So we're focused on growth as a person, growth as a team, growth as a class, inclusivity. We respect every individual, regardless of where they come from. Trust, and that basically translates to we deliver what we promise for our students in terms of activities, quality, and outcomes, and that positivity element that we love what we do. And that really comes through, I think, in the teaching realm because our teachers are all specialists in the subjects which they teach. So, for example, our chemistry teacher is a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry and has taught and lectured all over the world in that subject. Myself, I teach law when we run it on the foundation, and that's my background. So you're already ahead when you have a teacher who genuinely understands and loves their subject, and it's infectious for the students.
Oh, that's really good to hear. Um, Obviously, you've been in operation only a couple of years, and I think it's important to have a senior leadership team in place. And tell me a little bit about that team and what qualities they have.
So the leadership team is spread effectively from 3 different camps, and that cross-pollination works really well for staff and students. There's myself, of course, with the background I've mentioned, 20 years experience in the university sector, HE and FE. We also have the LILA senior leadership team who, because we share an admin and support team, so when it comes to help with accommodation, with general pastoral care, with help with finance, and the general safety within the building, you've got 20 plus years of experience sitting in that team. We work very closely with, of course, the central team in London at David Game College. So we have, of course, David himself, who has, I won't say how many decades of experience, but John, my equivalent, the principal down in London, Mr. Cave running the UFP and his team. So there's decades of experience cross-pollinating to help support the delivery here. I have a senior teacher as well, who himself has 20 years experience delivering education at the FE level here and in South Africa. So although it's a new and vibrant modern setting, parents and students alike can be certain that their teachers have a great deal of experience, both in the classroom and in their leadership team.
That's excellent to hear. All right, let's look at our students and what expectations do our students have from our staff and administrative staff and faculty there?
I think that nowadays students generally have justifiably high expectations. Education is not cheap and it is a service, and students are far more consumer like in their approach. They know that they're buying a service. I think they also understand, certainly our students understand, they're not buying the qualification. They have to put the work in, and that we will support them in achieving the standard they need to do as well as they should. And for some students, success is a C or a B if they've come from a very challenging background. For many students, an A or an A star is the only thing they will accept. They have very high standards that they demand of themselves. They expect accessibility. We are very open plan. My own office, the teacher's office, and the admin team are always accessible. There are no closed doors. So when students need help, they can access it regularly. And we've been lucky enough to have some feedback and reviews from recently graduated students that reflects that they have felt that. They expect to be pushed. They expect the standard inside the classroom and out to be exceptional, truly exceptional, and we demand those standards from our teachers. And they expect added value. So it's not enough just to come, if you're doing, say, business economics and maths, to have your classes and leave. We have an exceptional careers program. We have our progression platform, which is a skills-based program helping students to develop additional skills for the workplace: leadership, teamwork, negotiation and conciliation, concession making, professionalism online, things like this. So I think they have high expectations for accessibility, for support, for quality and outcomes. And that is very much the expectations we have of ourselves as well.
That's excellent, and I'm sure the students are successful. Now, let's move on to the courses and the programs, because it's important now to discuss the two areas that you just highlighted before, which is the A levels and the foundation program. Tell me a little bit about each one and what is different between an A level and a foundation program, of which both are of level 3 standard.
Absolutely. So this is a question we get a lot from students and parents. What is the difference? Which one should I do? I do say that honestly, I think a lot of it is quite personal and specific to the student, to what they want to learn, to how they want to learn and be assessed, and to their long-term ambitions. So A levels for us are delivered in two different formats: the 2-year September start and the 18-month January start. A levels could be referred to as the traditional route into university. They've been around for many, many years. All universities recognize and accept A levels as an entry criteria, but they're not the only entry criteria. A levels are taught, and as you say, at level 3, the same as the foundation program. So the depth and breadth should be the same. Over the period of time that you're on the A level, whilst you will do mock examinations and your teacher will set you tests, you will be examined on your A level learning, the totality of that learning at the very end of your program. And that's not for every student. Some students do far better with in-course assessment and regular periodic assessment points throughout their learning. The foundation is quicker in that it is a 9-month course if you join us in September. And in Liverpool, we have this unique offering as well of an intense January start program, which is a 6-month program. And it really is intense. It's compressed. It's like a full-time job. The UFP, I think, is a program that is particularly well suited to international students. It contains core module content that every student will study, including a particular standard of mathematical ability and communications and office technology, which makes sure that they then have a level playing field if they progress to university. They then choose 3 major subjects, which in combination give their foundation program that special focus. And in Liverpool, we have business and finance, we have law and humanities, science and pharmacy, and we also have engineering and computing. Those last 2 are new for this September. So for some students, the overriding reason for choosing A levels or UFP will come down to their next destination. Very gifted students might be looking at Oxford and Cambridge, in which case A levels is far more recommended as the route. They're recognized by those 2 universities, and some program choices also are better suited to A levels: medicine, some pharmacy degrees, and veterinary science, for example. But for a lot of the remaining courses, it really does come down to personal preference on the part of the student. Our foundation is now recognized by around 100 universities with some guaranteed progression routes as well. And if students, for example, are looking at business and finance and they want to get to university a little quicker, maybe they're already 18, for example, then the foundation could be a really fantastic option for them. So we speak to students in great detail in the interview, and if they're given an offer, in the times between the offer and their arrival, to ensure that they're making the choice that is right for them. And then within that choice, that they're making the smaller level choices. So for A levels, the choice of subjects, or for the foundation, the choice of majors, to make sure that it's the best choice to support them going on to the degree program that they want at the university that they want.
I think that's excellent. And I also assume that with the history of David Game College and their success, that there's a lot of focus on Russell Group universities, I imagine.
There is. I and my team make sure that students reach the highest level of achievement that they can, and that's often beyond where they thought they could when they joined us. So there's a lot of conversations with students about what they enjoy, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and that should then spit them out at the end, as it were, as a well-rounded, well-qualified candidate for, as you say, Russell Group universities, the top group of universities. We're very blessed in the northern region that we have many of those universities, both in Liverpool and across the region. And particularly for international students, it's important that we make sure they understand the true nature of the choices they have. Sometimes there's an immediate focus on London. London is fantastic and has some amazing world-class universities, but the UK is fantastic and has world-class universities across the breadth of our land. And it is, of course, cheaper and sometimes more enjoyable for a particular student, depending on their personality, to go to a non-London based university. But we have been very successful. For example, one of our A-level students now has an offer to go to King's College London. We have sent students to Cardiff. Another student has an offer from, we've got, let me think, Keele, London School of Economics, Liverpool University, Manchester University have all made offers to our current crop of students. So they're getting very well rated offers.
I think that's excellent. And I'm sure as the years progress, you'll have tremendous success, even focusing on Oxbridge as well, which I'm sure you have that specialist support for the students. Now, if a parent and a student is interested to join these programs from any country all over the world, what are the entry criteria?
So they're the same base criteria for both UFP and A level, and that is that you have 5 GCSEs or equivalent. So that could be IGCSEs, could be an international baccalaureate, or it could be the local high school equivalent in whichever country you come from. Those qualifications should include English and mathematics, and they should be at a grade equivalent to the A to C. So the top 3 grades are, I think it's 4 to 9 in the modern parlance. So we're looking for pass and above level academic achievements. But as we know, within the David Game group, we don't judge students by their past. If there are some blips, we look very closely at those, see how the student is faring since and what the attitude is to future performance. So those 5 GCSEs, if one of them isn't English, we will look for other evidence of English prowess. So, for example, one of the secure English language tests, like an IELTS, with a score of 5.5 overall with no module below 5. Because we're embedded within a language school, an award-winning language school, if a student, say, applies to us in January, but they got a 5 at IELTS and they need a bit of help with their English, we have that fantastic ability to say to them, well, you can still come for a September start, but why don't you come in February and spend some months working on your English on an IELTS program with us, with the goal to get you to 5.5 or preferably 6 or higher before you commence your studies. And that language support can carry on into their academic program as well. Other than that, in interview, we look for students who are credible, who understand the courses that they are interested in, can explain to us why they're interested in them, and generally seem to us to be students who will thrive in our study environment.
Well, that's really good. Um, uh, I think the next question would be the nationality mix. You mentioned about Ukrainian students, you mentioned about other ethnic minorities. Could you Just give us an understanding of the current mix.
Absolutely. So we're in the summer period.
Mhm.
In terms of those that we've had Ukrainian, Italian, we had a British student for a term. We have also had Saudi, we have had Iraqi, but living in Dubai, Egyptian, and coming up in this September, scanning down the list, as well as Ukraine, and it's Ukraine is a decent proportion, but not overbearing in terms of their
Yes.
proportion. We have Slovakia, Equatorial Guinea, Bermuda, Iran, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea again, sorry, Montenegro, Qatar, Pakistan, lots and lots of different mixes. And last year we even had an American as
Ah,
well, a joint American and British nationality. So
that's really good, isn't it?
and
Hmm.
we've been in taking efforts as well to expand our profile into countries not represented in that list as well to further diversify. Within LILA, the language school, there are currently, as of this week, 44 different nationalities in the building with just over 220 students in total. So they are drawn from all across Europe, Southern America, into Asia and Africa. So it's a truly
Incredible.
vibrant international environment.
Absolutely incredible. Um, right. So our students, they succeed, they achieve their grades they want, but are there any exceptional stories that you could tell me about any particular student or students?
I would pick out two straight away with no fear or favor of in terms of missing anyone out. So the first I would mention is a student we had called Hannah from Ukraine last year on the foundation program for business and finance. Exceptionally focused, exceptionally mature, and Hannah and her colleague in her particular class competed in the very best way that we want students to compete. They drove each other to do better in a very good-natured competition. Hannah actually got 100% in the maths core exam that forms part of the foundation. And I believe I'm right in saying that in that intake, that was the highest mark of any foundations program student, be it here, London, or at Bath Academy. So that gives you an idea of the quality of her outputs. Hannah not only had our support in applying to the universities she wanted to go to, and she had very clear ideas about where she wanted to go, but we also gave her individual support for scholarship applications, and we support the students in identifying scholarships that are both university provided but also from private bodies, foundations, trusts, etc. And she won a scholarship to go to university that pays for 50% of her fees and 50% of her accommodation. So that's a pretty
That's
hefty
incredible.
slice. And Hannah
Absolutely
has remained
incredible.
in touch, and those who follow our social media may have seen pictures of her recently at Nottingham Trent, which is where she's gone. The other student I mentioned because of it shows the breadth of opportunities that we support. We have a partnership with the Stephen Jarrard Academy, which means any student can add that football experience, that iconic football
Mm.
experience to their academic program. And last year we had a student on the Business and Finance Foundation who was on the football program as well, very passionate player, played in goal. And he had offers from Liverpool John Moores and from UA92, which are both universities and university colleges with very strong programs in sport, sports management, business and sports financial management, things like this. But in fact, he chose a different route because thanks to his experience with the Stephen Jarrard Academy, he actually caught the eye of and was signed by a professional football team, Rayo Vallecano
Hmm.
in Barcelona in Spain. So he went off to be and fulfill his dream to be a professional footballer. But importantly for him, for his family, and indeed for Stephen Gerrard, he did so with an academic qualification under his belt. So he can now always make that choice to go on to university should football not work out. So two
That's
really
really
interesting
excellent.
stories.
That's very true. I was going to ask you about the Stephen Gerrard Academy, and just to
Mm.
give us a bit of background, because Stephen Gerrard should be very well known as a former Liverpooler and England international.
Yes, so Steve set up the academy because he believes in the power of education and of formalized training for the sport and for students who want to pursue their interest in the sport. The interesting thing about working with the academy is the value they place on academics as well as and equal to sport. So a student who joins us and pursues their football module as well will be taking on 10 to 15 hours a week, depending on the season, of match play, field skills development and training, physical conditioning, sports science and nutrition training, and all the things that go with being a high level performing sports person. And I should say sports person, they accept boys and girls. The academy has students with it who are studying purely football training programs from all over the world, America, Canada, Australia, Africa, South America. But they also partner with us so that they have A-level and foundation students. They actually take all levels of football player because they are a leveled out academy. So they have lower level, mid tier, and the very highest tier. They play in local, regional, and national leagues. And they also have their own residence, which is absolutely fantastic. Comes complete with gym memberships and an on-site chef who does all your sports meal prep, your macros, complies with any special dietary requirements you may have, like halal, kosher, vegetarian, which of course we then see the boys destroy by stocking their bedrooms with candy and crisps. But it's an amazing experience, and that team ethos, that culture that comes with sport, the leadership skills that can be developed through sport, can really spill over into the classroom. But as I mentioned, they value academics, so students shouldn't think that it's an easy option. If your academic performance or attendance starts to slip, and we think it might be due to football, the Stephen Jarrett Academy will shut off your access to football until your grades come back up. So it's very much a symbiotic partnership to produce both academically and athletically successful students.
That's really important. And if I recall, the actual halls of residence for Stephen Jarrett Academy is in Penny Lane.
It is
The famous
indeed
Penny
on the
Lane.
iconic
Yes,
Penny
like Penny
Lane.
Lane.
It's actually on the tour. The yellow Rolls Royce, hand painted with roses from the Sergeant Pepper album fame, does a regular tour around the most iconic Liverpool sites related to the Beatles, and it stops right outside the Penny Lane residence. So you are not only are you fantastically located for your training and the school, 20 minutes from each, but you are right there in one of the most iconic areas of Liverpool.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and my experience of visiting it was so enjoyable as well. Um, Now, the college obviously is established right in the centre of Liverpool, and tell me how you blend in with the community, and do you have any examples of any positive impact with the local community as well?
Well, LILA Victoria were actually chosen as some of the business faces of Liverpool in the last several years. So their faces were actually on banners around the city centre. We're active members of the Chambers of Commerce and the Business Investment District. And people who maybe haven't visited Liverpool for a couple of years, when you do come, you see the impact that those partnerships have had on the physical city centre and on the communities. The city is vibrant, it's a modern, very successful, growing city with areas dedicated to bioengineering and new technologies in the Knowledge Quarter, with the biggest financial career centre outside of London, with over 45,000 people working in finance. Its docklands are iconic. Actually, they handed back, it's an interesting story, they handed back their UNESCO World Heritage status because UNESCO won't let you develop. And the Docklands is this extraordinary blend of the beautiful older buildings like the famous Graces and the ultra modern buildings like the Titanic Museum. And it actually works incredibly well together to give this feeling of a city that has its feet in its history, but its eyes firmly on the future. Being very much in the city centre, this is very much not a Ryanair definition of central. We are genuinely in the heart of the city. When you step out, you are 5 minutes walk from the major train stations, 5 minutes walk from those docks. Everything, whether it's retail, business, or otherwise, is on your doorstep. But Liverpool is also a very green city. Many, many large parks. There is a beach, Formby Beach, within about 30 minutes of the city centre. And its architecture and its culture. I believe I'm right in saying there are more galleries and art museums or art galleries and museums here than any city in the UK other than London.
Well. I'm not sure if that's true, but I think that's a challenge that we have to Google, I think, and find out. Tom, I want to go back to our students now, and as a parent, um, what advice would you give me in order for my son or daughter to consider applying to the college?
Mm. I would say that the first piece of advice is, I would say, of general application to any student going into further education, which is that they should take seriously the amount of work and commitment that is required. It is a step up from GCSE or the equivalent level of study. And so students can never start preparing themselves mentally early enough. I would say that for parents who want their children to succeed, one of the hardest challenges is stepping back a little. We have exceptional safeguarding, pastoral, extracurricular provision. And the easiest way for parents to help their children settle into that is to allow them a little bit of freedom. So you don't want to be hovering too much over your child as they settle in. They need to find their feet. We're very much about children growing in their majority, their maturity, and their capacity to cope with the modern world. Um, I would say encouraging your students a curiosity, and inquisitiveness. It's always good to say to the teacher, where can I take that further? How can I develop that? Where could I see that in the real world? Our business classes, for example, every week look at a case study from that week's news and current affairs to apply the theory that they're learning. And students are encouraged to go out there, consume news media, consume industry publications, and try and find examples of where what they've learnt is actually happening in the real world. So I would say most students are very good at being online from a social media point of view. Parents could encourage them over the summer to start reading around their subjects, looking for news stories that are relevant to what they want to do, researching the city, and getting in touch with us if they have any questions. We have two students, for example, joining us in September who are huge fans of women's rugby, want to continue playing as under 18s in women's rugby. And they reached out to us and said, can we do this? And we reached out to a number of local clubs, and there is now a club ready with all the safeguarding in place to welcome these girls when they arrive, so they can continue playing women's rugby under 18 at a high standard from the moment they arrive in Liverpool. And the other piece of advice I'd say is tell them to have fun. Tell them to take it seriously, but not too seriously. Take the opportunities that living in another city and another
Absolutely.
country offer them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And benefit from that network of international and domestic students that you never know what career you will get into and what contacts you may need on the international arena.
And indeed the network that exists within David Game. We had a student who needed to do a new IELTS test. They wanted to apply to a university that required a higher standard. The quickest date we could get was a London-based one, and so the London College stepped up, and she stayed in the London College accommodation when she came down to London. So she got to see a bit of how the other half live, as it were. So, it really is a family within these group of institutions, and we can work together to help students experience the whole of the country.
I think that's so important because the David Game Group has a lot to offer to the partnership. We're now coming closely to the end of the program, and I want you to look ahead and tell me, what do you see for the future of this partnership?
I think it's a very special partnership because it brings together so many different elements and different expertise. So I mentioned the language support that carries on alongside academics. That's not something that a university could necessarily easily put in place, or a standard secondary school. Certainly a state provider would struggle massively. I think that the special nature of the David Game Group being in the same private ownership for as long as it has been means that there is a flexibility and an openness and a speed to recognize opportunity and ways in which we can work with and for students that perhaps would be slowed down within a larger corporate environment. So as we grow the partnership and grow our provision in Liverpool, I've certainly experienced so far an openness to new ideas and new development that I think will inform us here as much as it has in London. I know that there are many different opportunities just within the one building on Jury Street in London. I know that there is work going into how AI can be used in education, for example, in the future. These are the kind of things that in a a larger, as I say, corporate environment would probably need to be batted around for a couple of years before the benefit began to accrue for the students. So it's a really exciting time because we're a startup with the support of a well-established name in the market. And I think that's exciting for students, it's exciting for staff. I obviously see our volume growing. I'd like to see our programs developing. Music, the arts, and medicine are three areas that I think are eminently of interest to students, and obviously chime with the new government as well, talking about an increased level of focus and importance for the arts and arts education. So I think it's a very exciting time, and the next 2 to 5 years, let alone the next 5 to 20 years, are going to be really interesting for us.
That's great, Tom. And a final message, Tom, to convey to the parents and students.
I would say that with LILA College and the David Game Group, the message is that there is a very strong relationship of trust here. You can trust us to deliver on what we promise, to hold your children, your students, to a higher standard than they perhaps now think they can reach, and then look at their surprise when they do reach it. And it's a relationship that will last long beyond just when they're with us. I mentioned Hannah. We stay in touch with our students. It's a relationship we nurture, and we will support your students well beyond the end of their course. I have a young man just now who's changed his mind. He didn't want to go to university, and he's getting help from us now, even though he's finished, to go to university because he's still ours. He's still our student, and we still care. So I would say trust, care, growth, and success are the main tenets of the message from me.
Well, Tom, thank you very much. And I look forward to many future podcasts with you. To our listeners, if you need any more information, please go to davidgamecollege.com. Thank you for listening and look forward to the next podcast. Goodbye, Tom.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.